Well, gaining a psychological edge over your opponents and circumstances is the big part of sport. We've seen great teams find a way to keep on winning and maintain high standards of performance for long stretches of time, sometimes an entire season. So as Manchester City put the cherry on the cake of their season, and they were pushed all the way by Arsenal. On the domestic front, here in South Africa in the DStv Premiership, quite a different picture for Mamelodi Sundowns, who wrapped up the title with 6 league games to go, and they're chasing another historic first, and that is going an entire DStv Premiership season, top flight season in South Africa, unbeaten. To help us unpack the psychology behind this, we've got sports psychologist Dr Kirsten van Heerden joining us once again. Thanks for chatting to Newzroom Afrika. They always say that it's a difficult thing to get to the top, but staying at the top is much more difficult. It seems, however, Mamelodi Sundowns, that doesn't apply to them.
Yes, hi. Well, thank you for asking me back again. It's always a pleasure to talk about these things and to talk about the mental side of sport. And 100% spot on. You know, the things that we must do to get to the top are often different to what we need to stay at the top. And I think a large part of what keeps athletes and teams at that top level is managing the pressure and managing their expectation. Because it's easy, right, when you've got nothing to lose. But when you do have something to lose, and every week it becomes more and more and more, like titles or an unbeaten season, that real psychological management of those expectations and pressure is vital.
What is the key then to be able to do it?
Sure, you know, I could probably talk for 3 hours just on that, that question. I think one of the keys anyway, and it might sound like such a cliche, but it's true, is to really focus on those fundamentals. I saw this great clip the other day, and the person, it was a sports psychologist and from overseas, and he was saying we need to learn to kiss better. And of course, you're like, what does he mean by that? But that idea of keep it simple. And I think the great teams and great athletes over time really manage to kind of hone in on doing those foundations well every single time they perform, and not skipping over any of those foundational things. So keeping it as simple as possible, focusing on those foundations of performance. And then, as you said, it's almost tolerating being able to do that day in and day out, not getting bored of doing the same thing, of knowing that even though you've got it, it can go so quickly. So that's one of the keys for me, is really focusing on the foundations and controlling the things you can.
Is there a very big difference between an individual athlete doing that? I mean, I think of somebody who had an incredible run in a very individual sport in swimming at the Olympic Games, in Michael Phelps, and that being quite different, I think, to the kind of psychology within a team where personalities, you know, can play, build up, but also divide and conquer any winning mentality that a team has, and the one that is required to maintain an actual unbeaten run.
Oh, absolutely. And I think partly in these very high performance teams, right, it's managing the competitiveness of all the athletes, because you've got this bunch of very, very highly competitive, ambitious athletes. And for sure, and everyone, all of us have a little bit of an ego involved as well. So a lot of that player management is absolutely critical in teams. You say very different to individual sports, where it's just getting the one person into their bubble and what they need to do. And to be fair, it's part of the role of a sports psychologist to be able to do that, but the coach also has a huge impact on how they player manage. And certainly at that top level, it's less around the strategy of how they're going to do things. That is important. But managing those personalities, the good coaches, they're fantastic at that.
Yeah, and I suppose now as we look at a very at-home example in Mamelodi Sundowns, you think the credit must go to the coach, Rulani Mokoena, in actually being able to manage those things, not only on a physical point of view and his tactical acumen, but actually managing those egos?
I mean, for sure, I can't speak to what goes on in the team necessarily, but clearly he's doing something right. So for sure, I would say that being able to manage the egos, manage the personalities, get everyone to work together, he's clearly got some skill in that. Because also, just as we know, performance doesn't just happen. And, certainly continued success. And I actually quite like this idea of mastery more than success, where success is like one moment in time, right? You can win one match and you can be successful in that. But to kind of master a season, you need more of those moments stacked up. And I say being able to manage that, that's really what the good coaches and, often backed up by sports psychologists can do, where we don't get too caught up as well in one win, or in this, also in one loss as well.
Mastering success over a period of time, it certainly sounds a lot easier to diagnose than actually to do, as it is with many things in life. Much easier to say than actually put into practice. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Kirsten from Heerden, sports psychologist, chatting to us now, Stephen and Ollie, about what is looking very much to be like Mamelodi Sundowns marching on to another chapter in history, and that is an invincible season. They've only got 2 more matches to go. Their final match of the season this coming Saturday, and then tomorrow's match against TS Galaxy.